And if it's loud, I mean, it's fucking New York. What are you gonna do? You know what I mean? But you're originally from Jersey, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You've lived here a while?
Yeah. I just kind of floated around my friends' places.
Okay.
And then I went back to SF in '98 because I was still riding for Mad Circle. I'd bought a car. I drove that out to SF. I got a place in SF for like a year, and then came back to New York in '98.
It's a lot of traveling.
I mean, it was like
maybe not at the time.
What I did,
yeah.
You know, like I had money from skateboarding, and I had a car, and I was just getting paid to skateboard, so it was like fuck it. I actually drove back to New York from SF with Rob Welsh and Tony Mirana and Nikel Thayer.
Oh wow.
Tony Mirana rides for Anti-Hero,
okay.
or used to.
Yeah.
He was like one of the later Anti-Hero guys in the golden era of Anti-Hero. He's like kind of the last golden era like Anti-Hero guy. And
one of those all-terrain skaters? Or?
Yeah, kind of more like transition guy.
Okay.
But he was from Louisiana. Crazy ass dude.
What's up with all those guys though? Like, you know, I only started recently skating transition, like more in a more concentrated way.
Yeah.
Because like I said, you know, Long Island's flat. We didn't have a lot of skate parks. The parks we had were like those modular, whatever. And then we would always.
You mean like Gilgo Beach or what was the one?
Yeah.
Is it Gilgo?
Nickerson,
right. Yeah,
Beach, Long Beach.
Yeah.
There was Baldwin, which I guess is still there, even though they took out all the ramps. Then we had
just like prefab, kind of like
Oil City was there.
Yeah, Oil City, right?
All those spots, but you know, you couldn't you didn't have a car, you couldn't get there really.
Yeah.
But anyway, like none of those guys from the Bay Area, they didn't wear pads, they didn't wear helmets.
Well, a lot of them are not from the Bay Area, first of all.
Like, how did they not just blow their knees out and, like, they're just that...
I don't know.
Their reflexes aren't that good.
I don't know. It's just, like, kind of punk.
Yeah.
And, like, you know...
Because I've been putting on pads lately, and it's, like, such a game changer.
I think that was, like, the thing with concrete. It was, like, it comes out of pool skating.
Right.
And pool skating is either, like... I guess it gets to a point with pool skating, like you could be in and out of that pool in 20 minutes, so it's like, fuck it, why even put the pads on? And then there's the punk aspect of it, you know?
Which I understand, as like, you know, I'm 35 now. When I was younger, I thought, you know, helmets are dumb and whatever. But now I'm like, I don't want to be brain dead or whatever.
Well, you know.
I'm terrified of it.
I think too, like with that realm of pool, like concrete skating, back in the day, a lot of guys were coming out of skate parks.
Right.
I'm talking like 70s, 80s era skate parks, where pads were like, that was what you did. You put on pads.
Yeah.
And now,
fashion.
A lot of the guys are coming out of a street discipline where you're just more used to running out of a trick or what, you know, whatever it is. Plus, a lot of these guys are limber, and you know, I mean, I can't imagine the day we see like Julian or you know.
Did
Tony.
They just not fall a lot?
No, you just ran out of it and tumbled.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a transition skater, so I don't really know.
Yeah, but you're pretty adept at the smaller transition stuff. You're very technical.
Yeah.
You obviously know what you're doing in some sense.
I mean, it's a lot of it is just being able to run out and tumble out of your trick, and the other thing is that if you learn skating vert, well, vert is a different animal.
Yes.
But if you learn skating vert with pads on, you learn how to knee slide.
Right.
And then that knee slide becomes a reflex.
Yeah.
And then if you don't have pads on and your reflex is to go to your knees, you don't want to do that. So it's a lot of it is learning how to run out of your tricks, you know, and tumble and not go to your knees.
But then I just like do the shoulder check.
I mean, the shoulder check is like another kind of like smaller transition thing where the coping is close to the ground, so you're gonna just go right to your shoulders.
Like 6 feet or lower.
With larger transitions, you can kind of like slide on your fucking back or whatever.
It's wild. And they did have a vert ramp at Oil City, as I mentioned. But
I mean, that was the slickest thing.
Yeah,
it was almost
so hard.
It was almost ironic that it was called Oil City.
So you went there?
Yeah, I went there like twice. Yeah.
It's so funny.
And I was like, is this a joke? Like Oil City?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where was that? Like,
technically, I guess it's Oceanside. Or Island Park.
Or Island Park.
On the border.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if you know the comedian Tim Dillon, but he's from out there.
Yeah. Dan Weiss too, or Weiss. Dan Weiss, you know
Dan
him?
Weiss, yeah, probably.
He was like an Oil City.
I mean, I knew some of the guys from like the Special Sauce connection. Like you still talk to Brian Davis, Dan Fink of the Witch's Brew.
Yeah. He's originally a Long Island, an upstate guy though, isn't he?
Is that right?
Maybe
right.
not. Maybe
he
not.
Could be right. I mean, when they skated in the early '90s.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know about Finkelstein, but
I only recently learned from Brian that like it was Ray Fretch. I used to hang out with Dan King. That's how.
Dan King, right.
Like that was my conduit into kind of knowing about skateboarding and stuff like that. Although I was never in the industry.
Where is Dan King from?
He's from Long Island, Huntington.
Huntington,
yeah.
That's where I thought maybe.
So he knew like all the people. He knows like everybody from there. And then we didn't know each other on Long Island, but then when I moved to Greenpoint in like 2009, we just connected organically, and then we skated a lot. And then we ended up knowing a lot of the same people. But in the early 90s, I guess, having like a camera was not a common thing. And Brian Davis told me that him and Ray Fretch were like the only ones who had a camera. So they filmed like all the whatever footage that they had at the time. And they had to like edit it on these old programs and stuff. And Ray, I guess, still does his wheel company, Prize Fighter.
Prize Fighter, right?
Yeah, I bought some wheels from him a few years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're all really nice guys. Yeah. Like very normal.
Yeah. I think I might have met him through Autumn.
Yeah. And good skaters. I mean, Dan Fink always ripped.
Yeah.
And yeah, he has that. I don't know if you've ever been to that tea place.
Yeah, of course.
It's really nice. And there's the Savers right there, which I like.
And a great spot across the street.
Which one is that?
The little bank to ledge, the bank to curb, where you got to ollie up the banks, and then there's like a little curb on top. It's right across the street from the Savers.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I was just there. I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah, it's in that doctor's office parking lot. Yeah. Across. Like if you're looking at the Savers, it's across.
Wow.
Yeah. What is that? Route 25 or something?
Yeah, Hempstead Turnpike. Yeah. You ever skate? How much of Long Island have you skated?
Not that much. No. It's a big place.
Yeah.
I've only skated a few things out there.
I feel like I've kind of turned my back on skating out there.
I mean, it's
difficult.
Big and a lot of the same suburban kind of just
loading docks.
Yeah. Whatever.
But yeah, you want to jump into the Cellar stuff?
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, I'm just the idea of the article is pretty much just trying to figure out like when cellar doors started appearing in New York City particularly. And then, I wasn't able to find out why, from like a structural standpoint, a cellar door would be slanted or sloped versus flat. It seems like it has to do with flooding, and maybe like if it's at an angle, obviously less water is going to get in. Maybe the prevalence of that at a certain time came about because certain areas were on a floodplain, whatever.
It also could do with just convenience.
Yeah.
Kind of like because they're obviously going down into basements.
Right, and I also thought maybe in some cases like the size of the hole, like the hatch itself.
Yeah.
Maybe that made like a flat one prohibitive in some way.
I've heard them called bulkheads.
Yeah.
People in like up in Boston call them bulkheads.
Yeah.
I never heard that around here. They were always called cellar doors. Obviously, then the other thing is like cellar and basement. Like which one is which?
Well, I found out that New York City makes a distinction because there was like all these people in the 19th century living underground kind of illegally.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, a basement has like half of the space above the curb.
Right.
And then a cellar is below the curb.
Super interesting.
Yeah. And then it's illegal to this day to live in a cellar, but you can live in a basement.
Yeah. Basement apartments.
It really has to do with like light and stuff like that.
Right.
And then also randomly, like, I don't know if it's I feel like it's Soho, like there's like it's like a cellar door type of material, steel, and then they have those bulbs in it.
Yeah, diamond plate. Yeah. Oh, the bulbs that are transparent and you could see, like you could get light through.
Yeah, it was like for workers.
Yeah.
To get light.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Well, I've been to, there's especially like in the winter, there's certain sidewalks that you'll walk past, and if there's snow on the ground, this is very rare.
Yeah.
But if there's heat coming out from that space, and sometimes you'll see them on the sidewalk or on at least like this part of the building, like, you know, closest to the wall of the building, there's heat generating out of it. There would be the ability to melt the snow underneath. Sometimes bakeries would have their ovens down in the basement. And there was this one spot in Bushwick that operated, they would bake bread under there, and that oven was underneath the sidewalk, and the sidewalk would always melt.
It's so
it was really interesting.
Man. Yeah,
but
it's crazy. Like,
I'm sorry, I shouldn't say the sidewalk would melt. The ice on the sidewalk would melt.
So that would be a very trippy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I have like these questions. Could just roll through them.
Yeah.
See how many we get through.
Yeah.
All right. So, do you recall the first time you saw someone skate a cellar door?
Well, I mean, the first time I saw anyone skate a cellar door was me, because I had one in Clifton that was on my way down from my route from my high school, and I would just roll up it and roll down it, because I talk about it in my my out there.
I feel like I've seen that.
And I just would roll up it, and I would try and go from the door onto the curb, onto the step, and then I would try and like make it off. This is like
you just came up with the idea of riding up it on your. You didn't see it in a video.
No. I mean, it was a slanted object, so I was mimicking a bank.
Right.
You know, it was like, and this was in like the late '80s.
Yeah.
Early late '80s.
A long time ago.
Yeah, but it was also right across the street from my elementary school too.
Oh,
so
wow.
like, it was always there, and it was like when you were a kid. I mean, just like now, you look at something, you're like, oh, I could skate on that.
Okay.
Or I could, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But then, now this is interesting. Mondo Vision comes out in '89.
Okay.
And I had just done this piece on.
So you did a great job with that,
if you watch the Mondo Vision video, Mark has well, that's not true actually. I'm not sure if the clip is in the Mondo Vision video or if it's in Death Bowl to Downtown.
Okay.
But in Death Bowl to Downtown, Rick and Buddy got access to some unseen clips that were not in Mondo Vision.
Right.
And Mark actually rides up a cellar door it might be the one on Center Street. I never really like sat there. The one that's got the chain across it now.
Oh yeah.
You know what? There might be scaffolding across it now. I don't know if it's exactly that one. I never sat and tried to figure out exactly which one, because there was a lot more of them back in the 80s and 90s. They're slowly being like kind of disappeared.
Yeah, that's what the thing is, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting how that happens.
You know, but and that could have everything to do with like just the spaces being converted into living spaces and accessibility and security and blah blah blah.
Yeah, totally.
But anyhow, plus those things, I'm sure eventually will rot. You know, especially if they're from a certain time period.
Yeah.
Because I've seen photographs, for instance, on Lafayette, on Jersey Street.
Right.
There's a public library. It's only a 2-block stretch of street. It goes from Crosby to, I guess, Mulberry, and there's a wheelchair ramp leading up to the library, and that wheelchair ramp, back in the day, I saw a photograph from like the 1940s, and on the other side of the wheelchair ramp was these giant slanted cellar doors. Also, there's a photographer named Danny Lyon, and Danny Lyon shot a lot of Lower Manhattan before the Trade Center was built.
Oh shit. And
that whole neighborhood used to be called like Little Armenia.
Oh.
It also used to be called the Electronics Center or Radio. I think it was called Radio Row.
Yeah.
But it was where most of the electronics were sold.
and all that.
Yeah, well, J&R is like a survivor of that, right?
Yeah.
It was more like where the Trade Center was exactly, like that whole little zone, and they bulldozed all of it to put the Trade Center up. But Danny Lyons, if you look at his photographs, there's like tons of crazy skate spots that are no longer exist.
Yeah.
You know, all the buildings that got destroyed.
How did you end up finding about that photographer?
Just through like being interested in New York City history.
Yeah.
You know, his photographs are from like they have to be from like the mid to late 60s, because construction starts down there probably as early as 67, 68.
What an interest. I mean, sometimes, of course, like, you know, you'll see, like you said, old photos. I mean, that's a whole, like, interesting kind of fantasy, like the spot that you could have skated
totally.
before skating.
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I remember seeing, I don't remember which interview you were doing, but I watched a bunch, and you mentioned along the eastern edge.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and
there's stuff in there that's no longer.
I watched it, and
that's Pepe Torres, Ian Fromm, Mike V.
Okay, yeah. They skate like near the, it's still there, the Seaport Museum.
Sure.
And
those bulkheads are there.
Yeah, I was looking at these old photos and the same doors.
Yeah.
They don't ride up it.
Yeah.
It does have like some stuff on it, but that's like an original.
That's original throwback from, not a reconstruction.
Really old.
Yeah.
Not steel plated.
Well, that whole neighborhood somehow got spared down there. And that neighborhood was mafia controlled, the South Street Seaport, the Fulton Fish Market, and it has a super crazy history. Super crazy history.
So cool.
But
all right. So that's great. Do you remember when you started skating cellar doors in New York City?
Well, I think the first clip I ever. Well, first of all, I gotta go back to the question you asked before. If you looked at traditionally videos, I would say probably the first clips coming out on cellar doors is coming out of Philly, just because Rick and those guys had access to filmers, and that stuff was like readily. I mean, the whole city is filled with cellar doors. It's crazy. But
it is.
But I think the first clip I might have ever had on a door is, I think I ollie into a door that's no longer there on South 6th Street next to the Williamsburg Bridge.
Okay.
And it's like off some stairs into a door. And that might be in my infamous part. I can't remember.
Okay.
But I'd also have to go back and look because I can't remember.
Yeah, no worries.
But that's like probably 98, 99. So
a long time ago.
Yeah, so in terms of like filming stuff on doors, it's a legitimate door. Like there was also like those subway grates that would prop up.
Yeah.
And those were similar, like diamond plate style. Right. But obviously it's not a slanted cellar door, it's a pop-up, door.
Yeah, I never got into like pulling up stuff.
Well, I never did either, but the way I got into that was Keith Huffnagel actually showed me how to unscrew them and pull them up, and we used to go down and walk around the subway system.
Oh my god.
Yeah, like lower Manhattan. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's terrible.
But that's all like pre 9/11 stuff, like when it was like there was no like threat of like, getting arrested for terrorism or whatever.
Smoking in bars.
Smoking in bars, killing prostitutes. Yeah.
All right. So, is it a 4-Ply magazine you did an interview with?
Oh, I have no idea.
Well, anyway,
what was that?
I read this interview from last year, and you said that.
Yeah, probably. I think 4-Ply sounds
like
about right.
As you mentioned, like your skate generation was heavily influenced by vert skating.
Yeah.
And that you tried to emulate that in the streets. Like, were you were just drawn to cellar doors specifically because of that vert influence?
Well, that, and also we had them available.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, so there's not a bank. If it was like an asphalt bank, you would skate it. It's not an asphalt bank, but it's a cellar door, and it's just as skatable as a bank.
So like any type of wave type?
Yeah, any slant, whatever,
But there weren't there like some indoor concrete parks in New Jersey at some point, or was it Maryland?
Well, Cherry Hill, but that was like 1980.
This is a long time.
Yeah. I was not skateboarding at that point. Yeah.
All right.
And there was an indoor park in Long Island, I think.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if it was indoor or outdoor, and there was also one in Woodside.
Oh, really?
They had a skate park in Woodside.
I did not know that.
That was like going back to like 1979 or 1980.
Yeah.
I think that was on like Roosevelt Avenue or something.
That's crazy.
Hey, I think that woman left. We might be able to go back inside. I don't know if that fucks up your flow with the video.
No, I mean, if you want to transfer.
I mean, whatever. We could just keep going.
Are you okay?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, all right.
Well, it's also like kind of quiet in there, and I don't want to be like.
I like.
Okay, yeah. That's fine.
If you're okay.
No, totally fine.
All right. So, could you say like what section or sections of New York City did you frequent most often to skate cellar doors?
Well, it was always Lower Manhattan.
Always
at
Lower
first.
Manhattan.
At first, yeah.
Okay.
Because that's where a lot of them still were.
Yeah.
For instance, I had a clip in. I had a clip in my 5 Flavors part.
Okay.
Skating the Seaport, the museum door.
Really?
Yeah.
What'd you do on that?
I think I ollie over the island when that was a parking lot.
Yeah.
Now it's a child's playground.
Yeah, it's like a playground.
And I ollie over the island, I do a 360 flip, and then I ollie up the stairs, and then I ollie into the door.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a line in 5 Flavors. So that would be my first clip, and that's 96, 97.
Wow.
Yeah, that might have been filmed in 96, might have came out in 97, might have come out in 98. I can't remember exactly the trajectory.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah. But yeah, so that would be...
I mean, it seems like, from my perspective, it seems like you're the... pioneer of cellar door skateboarding.
Well, in New York.
Yeah.
Obviously Rick.
Were there did it spread? Did other people at the time, like in the late '90s? Were other people like, hey, Bobby's doing that?
No.
Maybe I'll.
There
try
was
that.
Other people where I would skate a spot, and then other people would come up and do a trick on it after. I kind of whatever.
Broke it in.
But there was like, for instance, that door that I was just talking about on Center Street.
Yeah.
Obviously, that thing was there, and people did tricks on that. Huff, a lot of people did tricks on that because that thing was on the way from, like, say, Supreme to the Banks.
Okay.
So it was like, as you're going down, you hit it, you roll up it, whatever. Maybe there's a photographer, a filmer with you, and you want to try something there. So it's not like I invented the shit. It's,
okay.
It was always there.
Gotcha.
It was just like what you stopped and tried, because a lot of it was just routes to and from, like, the Banks.
Yeah.
Or if the Banks was always the meetup spot, and then you went and skated, like, World Trade Center or whatever.
At Pyramid Ledges or. Yeah.
Well, Pyramid Ledges were a little bit later.
Maybe that was my time.
Yeah. But
2000s.
Pyramid Ledges they were always there.
Yeah.
But it was like, then it became like a spot where, like, kids were doing. I'm talking like kind of like 90s.
Before.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But Pyramid Ledges they were always there. But there was just like other spots, like World Trade Center had great white marble benches out in front of it.
Really?
And another spot we skated was across the street from the Federal Reserve. There was like this long ledge there. There was just little things.
Yeah.
They called them. There was another spot with these like little curb cuts, and I can't remember the name of the spot. But yeah, there's like footage of like Ron Carnegie there in like the early '90s. Javits Center, whatever.
Oh, I love the Javits Center.
Yeah.
It's like, it was kind of like a nasty...
Javits Center downtown, the courthouse. There was also the Jacob Javits Center Convention Center, which is up
the plaza.
Yeah, that's
I missed that.
That's
spot.
in Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah.
But there's a Javits Federal building downtown in Lower Manhattan that had a bunch of stuff around it. It's still there.
That's sick.
Yeah, it's across from Blubba.
Oh wow.
Yeah. That's called not the courthouse with the drop.
Right.
On the opposite side. That's called that's the Javits Courthouse.
I know that. Yeah, that was like where I went when I was a teenager. We would just go to the Banks, walk down Water Street, Pyramid Ledges, Veterans Memorial.
Yeah, Veterans. That used to be different too.
Battery
that was
Park.
That whole plaza used to be configured differently.
Right. It was like in the photosynthesis, right?
Yeah.
Dill did that.
Yeah.
Thing.
Right. Correct. Where he
and
walks.
we would always like look for it, and we're like, well, this has got to be it, but it's not. Yeah. I don't know when it changed. So it was just the way that you found them was just like kind of they were there.
They're just in the path.
On the way.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's see. So, would you say like before, like in the late 90s, early 2000s, before there was like the aggressive wave of gentrification, that skating cellar doors was not popular in New York City?
Not popular?
Like, it became kind of a thing.
It became
later.
like a genre?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, you're talking about, there's a little bit of two things that I guess go into something like that. A, there was way less skateboarders.
Yeah.
B, you had, if you wanted to do a trick, you had the Banks. So there was that. Mm-hmm. It's like, am I gonna like try and skate this object that's much harder to skate on?
Yeah.
Possibly making way more noise.
A lot more noise. Yeah.
I could fucking chip my teeth on this, like, you know, whatever, you know, it's just slightly, you know, and then there's that element, like, that it is a much harder kind of like thing to navigate through.
Yeah, for sure.
So it depends on, like, you know, it is what it is, like, kind of thing.
All right.
But in terms of, like, the gentrification aspect of it, I mean, you're just talking about the community just growing larger in terms of, like, more skateboarders.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing is that with something like that, you know, there was once a space becomes popular, more people want to come here and skate it. Mm-hmm. There's also, like, you know, the stigma is involved in New York, like it was a dangerous place. So, you know, like, people didn't come to New York to, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But, so it's just like, you know, skate tourism to a certain extent was a lot different. But, you know, the Bones Brigade came here in '85 and skated the banks. And,
but it didn't take, like, I remember being, like, at the banks at the Banks Jam or whatever it was called. They had that in, like, 2003, 4, 5.
Yeah.
And I always thought, like,
the big banks.
What's that?
The big banks.
Yeah.
When they had, like, skate objects there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, if these guys, like, you know, because they would, I guess, fly people in to do the contests and stuff. Like, if these guys lived here and they skated here all the time, they would, like, put all of us out of business, like, basically, because they'd just kill it. You know, like California. But then turns out that that's not really true, because there's kind of like this aesthetic approach to skating in New York, which is almost as important as the tricks that you're doing. Sure.
You know? Well, there is that element, yeah.
But for sure, like, when I just ended up randomly coming to, like, Williamsburg in 2006 or 7, and then I was like, oh, this is so cool. There's, like, all these skaters. And I was from Long Island.
Well, that's where a lot of...
I should move there.
Yeah, a lot of skateboarders, when the revitalization of... Well, there was also 9/11. There was no real reason why you wanted to live in Lower Manhattan.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, the East Village is a totally different animal, but the 9/11 event pushed a lot of people out of Manhattan, and, you know, myself included, even though I moved out of Lower Manhattan in 99.
Okay.
I actually went from Uptown to Lower Manhattan to Brooklyn by 98, 99. I was living in Brooklyn.
Was KCDC there at the time?
KCDC, I think, starts in 2001.
Yeah.
But I don't remember. I could be wrong about that.
Okay.
I could be totally wrong about that. Don't quote me on that.
No, it's okay.
But, I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure you're right.
It's either 2000 or 2001.
Yeah.
And there was a whole wave of people. You know, the other thing is that Williamsburg, waterfront, you know, Bedford Avenue, that started to get gentrified way back in the early 90s.
Yeah.
I remember, like, the dudes from, there was a lot of artists that had spaces there. Kenny Scharf was out there way back when. They Might Be Giants, this band, They Might Be Giants, filmed a video on the waterfront there. This is like 91. But Williamsburg was still like that was a no man's land back there, and it was Williamsburg was a bad neighborhood back then. It was, like, really renowned for murder, heroin, stolen cars.
That was my understanding. I used to be on that official New York forum.
Okay.
When I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And I would get, like, all my info about spots.
Yeah.
Because my only thing, like, we would get on either the bus or the LIRR and go to, you know, like I said, Lower Manhattan, or we go to Flushing. That was it. You know, I didn't go to Brooklyn. I didn't know anything about Brooklyn. I thought it was like that's where you go to get murdered.
Well, Atlantic Avenue, you had to stop on Atlantic Avenue, Broadway Junction, which back then was like, fuck, you know.
And I was like, you know, a little white kid, so I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to handle myself or whatever. But we would see the videos of you and other people skating that, like, you know, park that it's like a DIY on the waterfront, right?
Yeah.
With the volcano.
We called it.
And all that.
Well, the name for it was Skanky Town.
Oh my God.
Because it was written on this concrete, Skanky Town. And back then, that was like, well, you know, that used to be a railroad terminal where the freight would come off the ships, and they would load them onto the tracks there.
Yeah.
And there was, like, it was called Brooklyn Eastern District Terminal. And Kent Avenue actually had railroad tracks that ran down it. It was similar to like the elevated train on the West Side Highway.
Yeah.
Or on 11th Avenue.
Oh, the High Line.
The High Line.
Yeah.
And the reason they put the High Line up was because they used to run freight down 11th Avenue, and so many people got hit by trains there.
Holy shit.
That's why they elevated it.
Damn.
And they used to call 11th Avenue the Avenue of Death, kind of before Queens Boulevard, which was due to vehicular traffic.
It's like all these old people trying to make the light. They can't make the light.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
Yeah. But now you have like 30 minutes to make that light.
But
anyhow, let me just say this.
Yeah,
so that spot on North 7th Street, when Brooklyn Eastern District Terminal went out of business, it became an abandoned lot. And there was like homeless people living down. Oh, I shouldn't say homeless. Well, I should just say people living down there, because they were building their own little shacks and living back there.
Like squatters.
There was also, interestingly, there was a leaking hydrant back there, so there was like a water source, which is kind of crazy. There was a leaking fire hydrant. In fact, one day I went back there and there was a dude taking like a full bird bath.
Oh my god.
With the water coming out of that hydrant. But
you guys drink out of that thing?
It was like not deadly if you did, but I don't ever remember myself drinking out of it. But it was just like a leaking hydrant.
Yeah.
And it worked because it had to work, because that was a fire, and there was plenty of fires down there. I remember one day I went down there and all these shacks had burned by probably somebody smoking whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had friends who found a dead body down there.
Oh my god.
Yeah. In fact, one of the owners of KCDC, Nevitt, and this guy Chris found a dead body, it floating on the banks of the East River.
That's very gnarly.
Yeah. But otherwise it was normal. The other thing is that Kent Avenue, kind of before this, mid 90s, had like fucking street walking prostitutes down. That's like where you went to get a prostitute, amongst other spaces. Yeah. But also like in the 90s, especially when I would come in from Jersey through the Lincoln Tunnel, which was rare. I definitely did go through the Lincoln Tunnel, especially like when I was a kid with my parents. Yeah. Like if we went to like Madison Square Garden, or not really the Yankee Stadium, but we would come through the Lincoln Tunnel, and it was like at night, it was like prostitutes everywhere. It was insane. Wow. It was like a strip club, except outdoors, and people conducting business. Because these women were like scantily clad. Yeah, for sure. It was pretty wild.
How long was that like a DIY there anyway?
What was it called? Skanky? Well, before Skanky Town.
Skanky Town.
And it was, like I said, it was written in like spray paint on the side, on the concrete. But before that, it was a pretty famous graffiti spot. Okay. Yeah, it was like, and I'm sure those guys had the name for it, but I don't remember what that was. Okay, cool. But yeah, that got kind of started to go through now it's a state park.
Yeah, I saw that.
So
they made it very nice.
I don't know like exactly when that happens, but for a long time, there was a point where we were skating there pretty regularly. They had bulldozed the pyramid and the quarter pipe. I'm sorry, the volcano and the quarter pipe. And then I had built like a slant ledge way further back down towards the end of it.
Oh, you made that?
Yeah,
that's really good.
But those people who commandeered that revitalization, obviously the state. Yeah. At one point, they made it inaccessible. You had to hop this crazy iron fence. Actually, the fence that's still there. Oh man. One day it was like if you went back there, you were getting tickets from the cops. And I know a number of people that got. So that was like kind of like our main spot. Because by that point, 2001, even though it was already going, right, the banks was sort of, after 9/11, the banks were done. Yeah. They parked. I remember going down to the banks after 9/11, and it was just filled with destroyed cars. Like and it also became like a little bit of like a Police Plaza. It's right there. Became this like fortress, area where it was checkpoints and yada yada yada.
All those barriers up there.
Yeah. No, like literally checkpoints, like police checkpoints, and the banks were done. Like, Lower Manhattan was done. Yeah. It was filled with fucking dust, and yeah, it was. You do not want to go down there. It was a terrible, terrible time. But yeah, so.
Yeah, I get it.
Digressing.
But what I remember is the yellow ledge was like, that was like
where the White Hotel
thing.
is.
Yeah,
that thing was awesome.
So it was like go to KCDC, maybe skate the ramp.
Yeah,
and then
skate the Yellow Ledge. Yeah,
and then I don't know, later maybe McCarran Park for the black little.
Yeah, in front of the bathrooms.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say this: there are a few doors in Williamsburg, but it is not the mecca of cellar doors. Okay. There are a few.
Yeah.
And usually those doors are, they pop up around places of industry or industrial style buildings. Philly is a different style. It's a different story. And there's plenty of spaces in New York, the 5 boroughs, that have doors on apartment buildings or residential buildings. Yeah. But then you're dealing with the people who live there.
Yeah, and they're usually not too happy about it.
They're usually not too happy. Yeah. So.
Oh, that's so fascinating. All right. I mean, let's see. Do cellar doors represent anything more than like an urban transition obstacle? Like, excuse me. Do they serve as like markers of a skater's creativity or like some kind of urban credibility or something like that?
I don't know. It's like, I guess you could kind of say like, it's much like graffiti.
Yeah.
You go into a bad neighborhood,
right,
and you get a tag off.
And you're like a badass.
It's like your cred.
Yeah.
But it is.
You never approached it that way.
No, I definitely at one point I would go into neighborhoods not looking for cellar door, just looking for anything.
Yeah.
To skate. But that wasn't motivated by like credibility. It was just motivated by like
curiosity,
uncharted territory,
okay.
and getting understanding a lay of the land, just whatever. But
and you did that like on foot, on
both bike, foot, skateboard, whatever. I used to ride trains to the end to the last line and get out and scout my way back, kind of thing.
So cool.
Yeah.
All right. I guess, I don't know, this is kind of in line with what we were talking about. So, to my mind, cellar door skating became popular between like 2005, 2015, thereabouts.
Sure.
And again, I believe large part that's due to your efforts. Do you feel that, when the rise in the cellar door skating, the popularity was there, like, do you feel like the meaning of skating a cellar door somehow changed? When there was like people, like
it's like back here pool skating.
Yeah,
it's the same thing. It's a subgenre, I guess. At this point, obviously, the pool is the origin of kind of like transition skating.
Yeah,
where the cellar door is not.
Right.
But it, if you wanted to compare it to like, wasteland, let's say Phoenix, Arizona, or Las Vegas, that sort of like the be-all, end-all, or the Badlands, Salva, like,
flying planes.
It's like, this is where the ultimate object there, to a certain extent, I don't want to say ultimate, but, because you could like look at handrails as another like subgenre of skating. There's people that only skate handrails, or ledge skating, or whatever it is, flat ground, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's like plaza skating. You could we could be sitting here talking about Love Park, that plaza in LA, Radio Korea, or whatever the fuck it's called. We could be talking about like public Pulaski, so it's like, it's like being like in the 90s, like, he has all his tricks filmed at Love Park, must be a Philly native, must be in with the crew to not get his shit stolen, whatever.
EMB similar.
Yeah, EMB is similar.
Yeah.
The kind of like but New York and the cellar door thing is like, it's just more about, it also has that like fucking urban exploration thing, kind of like, down the beaten path or off the beaten path.
So did you observe it, like, because I kind of did anyway, like, I don't know, I don't know if the word is like a dirty word, but I kind of saw like cellar door skating becoming like a hipster skating thing, and I was like, that's cool.
Yeah,
it was fun.
Yeah,
I did it.
Yeah.
But were you like, why are they doing this, or
no, obvious. It's obvious why they're doing it. You know, like it's cool. It's interesting. Yeah. It's like you see a spot and you're like, and again, the obvious answer is that and skateboard. This has been the allure, you know, or the lure. The LUR, the lure to skateboarding is that you want to do something cool, and when you're skating on an object that's not made for skateboarding, it makes it that much cooler. Yeah. You know, you're manipulating your environment. You're thinking outside of the box. You're looking at things differently. You know, so it's like it's obvious why. You know, and then there's like 100 different ways to skate any object. You know, so it's like, well, if he didn't do this, I'm gonna do this on it. You know, it's like, but you know, sometimes I approached it like graffiti writers, where it's like, well, I want to be the first to get my name here, you know, and then it's like, and then if the spot pops off, it's like, you know, whatever. I guess there is some like bragging rights to it, and you know, I've always said this, like, you know, it's like if you listen to Lance Mountain talk, he'll always be like, I'm not a good skateboarder. Yeah,
I've heard him say that.
But he is. Yeah, he is. He's an incredible skateboarder. But, you know, my whole thing was like, well, I can't, like, kickflip, tail slide the pyramid ledges, but I could tail slide this cellar door, you know, that no one's going to find for X amount of years. Right. And it gives me, like, kind of a little bit of, like, a, you know, like, this is my shit.
Yeah.
You know, so it's
and
like...
I feel like we're kind of past now, even, like, the, whatever, like, the ABD and all that shit, like...
Well, you're never past the ABD, but, you know...
You wouldn't say so?
Well, it's different times.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if it's already been done, it's already been done. It's like, that's like saying, like... And you're right, we are past it, but, you know, it's like if you take a classic beat, you know, like a Tribe Called Quest beat, and then you lay down a track over it... Right. It's like, well, you know... Like, what the fuck are you doing?
Right, somebody has ownership of that.
Well, to a certain extent. Yeah. It's like, you know, granted, Tribe Called Quest probably sampled it from X, Y, or Z. But, you know, I'm saying, like...
It might depend on the spot, too. Because, like, let's say you go to a famous pool, right? Like, two guys are there. They both do a frontside air.
Well, that's different. A frontside, you know, you're getting into, like, you know I mean, there's, like, technicalities. But, like, Mike Carroll says it best, like... If Eric Costin already did the back nose blunt on that ledge in, you know, like, let's say down Hubba, you know, you could go do it.
You could do it.
But it's already been done.
Right.
You know, and it's like at a certain point, this is getting into, like, you know, kind of dark territory. I'm just saying, like, it's, you know.
But I'm curious about that because I feel like as I get older, too, it's like...
Yeah, you don't care, but it's like...
who gives a shit?
You know.
You know, skating,
well,
and style is the individual part.
Yeah.
As much as, you know, finding the spot.
Yeah.
But maybe that's a matter of opinion.
I mean, look, that will always be a thing in skateboarding.
Yeah.
Like, who did what first.
Right.
Whether you want it there or you don't want it there. You know?
Yeah, for sure. And,
you know, now we're getting into, like, we could potentially get into, like, revisionist history. We could get into history in general. You know, like, do you want to not recognize the past, or do you want to recognize the past? That's up to you.
Yeah.
It's you don't need it for the advertisement, or you don't need it to get a paycheck. You know, it's just something that people will always sort of like talk about. You know, for instance, I heard these guys talking about pool skating.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, younger pool skaters just want to get old quick so they can kind of like fall into the like, I did this kind of thing, you know.
That's so funny.
But, you know, it is what it is. It's just, you know, it's you know. But.
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally like, I always try to like mix up what I'm doing, even if like I have my own thing in my head of like, I already did this, and then I don't want to repeat myself that much.
Well, then there's that too,
You know what I mean?
Because a lot of people can kind of like build careers off what they have done, which is fine.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not taking away. You know, it's the same thing in graffiti, or same thing in pool skating. Do I want to see Salba frontside carve the light and grind the death box? Hell yeah, I do. You know, I don't give a shit.
Right.
It gets down to like certain people.
Yeah.
You know, do I want to watch the 16-year-old kid do the same carve over the light and death box as Salba? Not really.
Maybe not.
You know? Same thing with graffiti. Do I want to see like another, you know, V for JA fill-in? Yeah, I do, because I love that, you know?
Gotcha.
So it's like, just gets down to like personal taste. And
yeah, you know, I feel like there was a period of time in skating where, you know, technicality was like, you know, held as the high standard.
Well, yeah,
but
totally.
then, you know,
as that started to get to the boiling point,
right,
it's like, well, where do we go from here?
Right.
You know,
it gets crazy.
Yeah.
And then it's almost like so difficult to even understand what's being performed if you're watching it.
Well, you know,
I mean, you have to be really well versed in skateboarding to understand it.
Yeah. Well, that every skateboarder should always be well versed in.
Yeah, I mean, you should.
The language.
But it's like someone else outside of skating, for example, can appreciate like a simple, beautiful movement.
Yeah.
Versus like something that's you know, got 3 or 5 components to it.
Yeah. Here's a better example. Like if you're not well versed in the language and the history,
right?
You know, and all of a sudden you come out with you know, it's like I said, it's not detrimental to maybe the check you're receiving from your sponsor, because they only really care about content to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't know, but it's like if you shoot the same exact photo that somebody shot 15 years ago, there's going to be a group of people that might look at you and be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" You know?
Yeah.
Like, don't you know this?
Right. You
should,
know? Maybe.
And sometimes, like with skateboarding, the concept of common knowledge, you know, it and I'm not trying to like say it's an earmark of intelligence, but it's like if you don't know that, then, and granted, there's kids that might not know it, you know, but I think
there's
with something like
media out there now.
Yeah, and I think with something like skateboarding, it's just always been built in, but we're also talking about a slower, you know, progression towards a pinnacle.
Right.
And then also, like you just said, media there's thousands of different ways to get your information.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's the other thing, is that with all this information, you have access now to everything that's ever been done in the past, you know, so it's like...
Right, the history is longer.
Yeah,
I mean, I remember up until 2005, probably, I knew every skate video.
Yeah.
And memorized some of them.
Yeah.
You know, and you, like, wanted to emulate what someone did in a video, like, in a place you've never been to.
Yeah. I guess an even better example is with graffiti writing.
Yeah.
Let's say you start to write graffiti, and you write like scene, S-E-E-N, and you're like, you didn't know that there was probably one of the most famous graffiti writers who ever wrote scene.
Yeah, I'm not aware of it.
In the 80s.
Yeah.
In the 70s. Okay. In the 70s and 80s. And you go out and you do this dangerous spot and you write scene, and you're like, all the other graffiti writers are like, what the fuck? Like, that's not scene UA, that's some kid who doesn't know that there was a, you know, so you've like essentially just kind of like clowned yourself and wasted your own energy and your freedom to a certain extent. You know, obviously skateboarding is slightly different.
Yeah.
But that's a sort of better analogy,
example.
You know, where like if you don't know your history, you could potentially, and again, it's never like wasted energy, but
no,
you know,
but it's hard to define a future if you don't know the past, honestly.
Yeah.
And when it comes to like, you know, the desire to have some kind of creative or individual expression, then you should probably know, you know, what happened before.
Yeah,
also,
exactly.
Like, you know,
obviously art is another great example, like where like you don't want to be making the same work that Ellsworth Kelly made in the fucking 50s and 60s or whatever, you know, 70s.
I had a logic teacher in college tell me, like, you know, you gotta learn the rules before you can break the rules.
Sure.
And I kind of I stuck to that as a skater, and you know, I try to uphold that, but you know, whatever. I'm not going to be critical of anybody.
Have you ever seen? Have you ever seen the? I think it was in Skateboarder.
Yeah.
Mike Carroll. Damn! Look at this chick's hair, or whatever that is on her head.
Oh wow.
It's like a fucking giant. There must be a lot of hair under there. Damn, that's crazy. So, it almost looks like a fucking puffed up balloon. It's insane. Anyhow, Mike Carroll came out with like, I think it was like the 9 do's and don'ts of skateboarding.
Okay.
and it kind of slid under the radar. This is like maybe 1999. But once like Love Letters came out, Jeff kind of like stuck to that kind of thing. Like, yeah, there's no rules, but there's rules. You know? Again, I'm not saying like
I have one beef with that, which is like I'm not good at tuck knee indies. Like, it's really hard to do. And then I'm like,
that's a you problem.
Yeah, it is my problem. But like if you do like a non-tuck knee, whatever that's called,
stink.
Yeah, like
it's called a stink bug.
Does it have to look like shit? Maybe not.
Yeah,
it depends on the person.
Well, there are indie. You're talking about strictly indie airs or frontside airs?
Frontside.
Frontside airs is not an indie air, first of all.
Excuse me.
And there are people like Reese Simpson who does a sick stinker straight leg indie air, but the stinker frontside air is completely different.
It's different.
The go-to is like Tony Alva, first of all.
Yeah.
He's the origin of the frontside air and the sick frontside air.
Okay.
And then like look at John Gibson, like it's always behind the knee.
Yeah.
Anything in front of the knee.
But when there's like,
but a frontside air is a frontside air. If you could do a frontside air, you're stoked.
I mean, that's how I feel about it. Because you're like, I'm flying in the fucking air.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
And then like, why?
Well, you're getting into the realm of performative, audience-based, kind of like.
But there's some conformity there.
Yeah.
Where it's like you have to do it a certain way. Well, why?
Yeah, he's saying you should do it.
Yeah.
It just looks better.
It looks better. I mean, I can't argue with that. But anyway.
And this is where we get into like the performer and the audience.
Yes.
That's
true.
Because it is a performance base.
And there's totally a difference. Like every skater probably knows. Like you do the trick, you feel like it was the best thing you ever did, and then you see the video and you're like, damn, that does not translate.
That's with any trick,
It does not feel like what it felt like when I was doing it. All right, so you mentioned in that same interview from last year that like something that there's a difference between, let's say, riding your board A to B, and then like spiritually skateboarding or something to that effect.
Okay.
And I wanted to ask if you do consider your relationship with skateboarding in some way to be spiritual.
Well, I would say like based on. I don't remember exactly the context of that question, but
I think it's just like, someone asked you like, have you been skating lately? And you're like, yeah, like to and from here and there, but not like in a spiritual sense.
Yeah. So a lot of it, the way I look at skating is like you want to reach this like it's like meditation.
Yeah.
So when you meditate, you could sit down for fucking 5 minutes and your thoughts are all over the place. And you gain nothing from it. Like with skateboarding, it's like you go skating and you achieve like a certain satisfaction from it, and from that satisfaction you gain a certain like peace. I guess that's probably like what I probably meant, because I've always gone skating with the aim of like achieving something, or learning a trick, or doing a trick, or just being satisfied. A lot of it comes down to satisfaction, but that's what I would say. Like it's probably that. But
because that's how I feel about it. I feel like it's, for me, a meditation. Again, as I get older, it's a safe thing for me to do. To like clear my head or whatever, and also it gives me an opportunity to develop a relationship with my surroundings.
What's funny about that interview is when he conducted that interview, I think it was around October of 2022. And at the time I had gotten hired to work on this like outdoor job for a friend of mine who owns a painting, like a mural painting business. And it was like a full week's worth of work, and it was just as like the weather was turning in October, like from like summer to kind of like colder. And I remember I wasn't skating that much during that time when I was working, but when the interview finally came out, I was skating a lot more, and I was like, oh, this makes it sound like I'm not skating.
Well, you're busy with something
I was just doing something else.
Which is fine.
So at the moment. But and then after that I started skating again.
But you do skate pretty regularly? Or?
Yeah. Although I would say since New Year's, I got sick.
Oh damn!
I got like a cold.
Yeah.
You know, not like fucking deathly ill. I just got sick, and it kept me off my board and in the house for a couple days, and then it got cold. And the cold is a real deterrent for me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like it, and it's just like,
makes sense.
if I'm gonna go out and kind of like feel like shit, I'm like, I might as well not even go out. You know, that was kind of like my attitude.
Yeah.
And it still is. Like today, I'm like, I could go either way. It's like, you know, but that's the thing. Like, if I'm not gonna get that satisfaction out of skating, it doesn't make sense for me to do it.
And you have a pretty good gauge based on like how you feel the weather.
Yeah, totally. I mean, everybody should.
I mean, I do, by this point.
You know, and the other thing is, like, I've been skating for like fucking 40 years or whatever the hell it is.
A long time.
Yeah. So it's like, do I need to go skating? Yes and no. Like, you know, it's like...
A lot of it is just like a routine.
Yeah. It's like meditation. It's like a practice, or like yoga, or, you know, whatever people do, you know? You
go out mostly by yourself to skate? Or?
Almost always, yeah.
Has it always been like that?
Kinda.
Yeah.
You know, there's definitely like
I'm similar.
crews of people that I've you know, linked up with throughout the years. You know, it's like this one person or this crew of people. It depends, like if I'm skating for a company and they're trying to like do a video, or like, you know, I'm on a trip or whatever it is. You know,
I find it hard to talk to people while I'm skating. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's a social thing, but
I know.
It has its moments.
I get like caught up in doing what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And like breaking out of that focus and like having a conversation.
Well,
getting back in.
Yeah,
I'm like,
totally.
Fuck, man. Now my sweat is dry.
Yeah. I saw this kid the other day at that Ocean Hill Park, and he was wearing a Big Boys shirt.
Oh, you went down? That's nice.
And I was like, holy shit! I was so psyched to see somebody wearing a Big Boy shirt. And I was like, are you from Texas? And he's like, yeah. And all of a sudden, here I am talking to this dude. He's trying to skate, and I'm like telling him some fucking wacko story, you know? I'm like, man, I should just shut up. But
I'm sure you appreciated it.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. All right, this is a weird question, but within the realm of what we've been talking about. But like, in terms of making a spiritual connection between yourself, your skateboard, architecture, does the cellar door somehow like activate that process in some way? Does it function, again, this is weird, as like a portal? Like, does the act of riding on a cellar door somehow like alter reality?
No.
Nothing like that.
No, I mean, obviously, it's the diamond plate is like a surface.
Yeah.
You know, some people prefer super smooth marble.
Okay.
You know, the Plaza of Pulaski or whatever it is, the bricks of the banks. You know, it's a very small. You know, the thing about a cellar door is that you gotta like kind of like. There's obviously a run up.
Yeah.
You know, a great example of a shit run up was the one. Oh, that's the other thing that I guess I'll address now. There's a lot of spots that I'll skate or have skated. Mm-hmm. Over time, they get renovated.
Okay.
And the sidewalk gets fixed. And a lot of kids will do a trick on a door that's like the sidewalk got fixed, and getting up to the door is like or any spot. It doesn't have to be a cellar door.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's a lot of unspoken sort of like things that go into stuff. And again, I'm not saying like when I did it, it was so much harder, but it's just different. It's like different time periods, and there's, you know,
is there some sense of nostalgia going back to the beginning? Like
no.
The cellar door that you first skated, when you skate one now, are you like taken back there in time in some way, or?
No.
Nothing like that?
No. But I guess a good example is that going back to that South Street Seaport door.
Yeah.
Somebody had like bondoed those two like you know, whatever they're called, like
slats.
Yeah, slats that go across it, and that made it easier to skate. And when I skated it, I didn't do that.
Right.
You know, so now it's like, well, you know, where are we going? Have I ever modified a spot? Absolutely. But I try to keep like the most integrity that I can.
Okay.
One of the craziest ones was, if you go back to my slap interview, I have a nose blunt slide on a like a what they would call a Philly stair, and there was like a flattish door that you had to ollie onto in order to get to the stair. Okay. And it's just like a single photo. It's not a sequence.
Yeah.
But the door was so fucked up that I actually had to lay a piece of plywood across it. And I look at it and I kind of regret that. But without that piece of plywood, I would have never been able to. The door was so like haphazard or like, you know, sunk in a weird way. I would have never been able to gotten that photograph. But, you know, it's like, so, but yeah, there's like, you know, certain spots have gotten modified and gotten fixed. You know, a great example was the Crosby Street one, where I guess this is in my V5 part.
Oh yeah, great part.
And I ollie up onto a skinny stair. It's on Crosby and Spring, or Crosby and Prince, Crosby and Spring. And it's in front of that like Crunch gym now or whatever. Ollie up onto that skinny stair, and the stair was actually rubber.
Yeah.
And then I ollie up and I nose manual the ledge thing or the platform into the door.
Right.
The run up to that fucking spot was so fucked up that I look back on that, I'm like, man, I can't believe, and it, you know, but I was determined to like get that, right, because it was so fucked up that I was like, anybody who tries to do anything else on this after, right, is gonna have to deal with exactly what I had to deal with. And you know, again, we're getting into like the realm of like low-hanging fruit. Like, you know, if you made that like stair like wider and you fixed the sidewalk, you could do ollie up, kickflip nose manual.
Right.
But just getting onto the stair was a pain in the ass, and then staying on the stair in a straight line to get to the nose manual was pretty crazy.
I find that often too with the street spots. It's like getting the approach correct is often harder than the trick.
You know, that's like going back to pool skating. You have to get the carve before you go over the light and the death box correct.
And that's like understanding the lines of whatever it might be that are not visible.
But long story short, and I don't know if that spot has gotten fixed, but I remember at one point walking down Crosby Street and looking at the sidewalk, and I was like, oh, they fixed the sidewalk. So now kids are going to come and look at it and be like, that's all he did on this? You know, and it's like, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, but you know.
I know.
And those who know.
Yeah.
And that means something. All right.
Hey, check this dude out. Where? With the American flag.
Oh.
It's just kind of crazy.
USA.
Yeah.
USA, baby.
But in terms of like, well, I don't know, whatever question you asked, don't get, it's...
I mean...
Yeah, it is what it is.
You answered it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Different surfaces resonate different vibrational frequencies, you know. That's a way I realized it one day when I was like riding like either my regular board or my cruiser board. I was like, wow, it's the rolling over a surface generates a vibration that goes through your feet up into your body, you know? And it's pretty interesting. So it's like ohming when you meditate.
Oh, wow. I can see that.
Or you ever like have a cat? You ever have a pet cat?
Yeah.
And they purr?
Yeah.
They're creating like this vibrational frequency. You know? It's pretty interesting. Which is like, some people will say that's the kind of like the life, you know, the sort of like life vibration, you know.
I would agree with that. Well, kind of along those lines. Are there like, well, do you have a preference for a certain type of cellar door?
Well, obviously the ones without the ridge down the middle.
Ones without the what?
The ridge down the middle, the Bilko doors.
Like a flush one?
Yeah. Flush one is obviously, but if that's what you got to deal with, that's what you got to deal with.
And do you have a texture preference you like?
Well, the diamond plates are obviously fun.
Yeah.
It's like people skating those like, you know, those etched coping. Metal copings now, you know.
That's right. Those are more popular now.
Yeah, just because it's like a funner sort of like experience.
Yeah.
But obviously, the thicker doors and a much like flusher placed door is going to be quieter. Yeah. A lot of it deals with sound.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to rouse the neighborhood.
Right.
You know, because once you rouse the neighborhood, you become the sore. or the Nuisance, and then you're also getting fucking either fighting somebody or getting kicked out or whatever it is. You know, I try to go in and get out as little.
So, do you usually have, I want to do this, I'll try to do that, and then leave? Or is it let me ride this for as long as possible?
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
Oh, it's always, let me try and skate this for as quickly as or as long as I can.
Yeah.
But New York has always been, that was always the thing, especially Midtown.
Yeah.
Midtown, it was you're definitely getting kicked out at some point, so you got to get in and get your shit. If you got the errant hour-long session at a spot, you were stoked. You know.
I haven't done that in a long time.
But I was always very hyper aware of the nuisance I was creating in what neighborhood. You know. Obviously, there's spaces like Lower Manhattan where back in the '90s it was mostly, commercial.
Yeah.
So it's you could be in there for longer. But you might have to deal with the security guard.
Right.
You're not necessarily waking somebody up, but you're dealing with the security.
Yeah, after 5 down there, it's dead.
Yeah.
Or on the weekend, for sure. But the security was tough. Okay, let me see. Just a few more, and then we can wrap.
Yeah.
My observation is that your skateboarding is very focused on conveying a sense of flow. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Is your dedication to skating cellar doors inspired by a desire to develop flow where it may not otherwise obviously exist?
What? Say that again?
You know how a lot of street skating is a straight line.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, I think I got you.
So it seems your intent is to develop a type of flow.
Well, I just look at I look at the layout of a spot or a door, and if it's a single trick, then you're okay, there's nothing else there to do on this, I'll just do this. Or if there's other stuff there, then you obviously form the line. It's like with any type of skating, you know. If there's a line to be done, then great.
Do you prefer to avoid going in a straight line while skateboarding?
No, I don't make those decisions.
Okay.
The spot kind of
the environment
dictates it. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's if this one thing is over there and you got to cross the street in a fucking diagonal to get to it, or whatever.
Okay.
But yeah, and again, I never started out thinking to myself I'm gonna be the cellar door guy. I just liked them,
Yeah. And you're not.
And I still
you
don't.
Obviously have a much bigger repertoire than just cellar doors.
Yeah.
You're not. But when I look at the skating of a cellar door, you come to mind.
Excuse me.
I mean, wow. But
that's good. I guess.
I saw. Yeah, it is good. What is it, Jerry Mraz? Is that how you say his name?
Yeah.
He did a part recently that was all cellar doors.
Yeah.
And I was that's dedication.
Yeah.
And obviously I don't know that I would ever do that to that extent, but it's interesting to see somebody take that approach where they're I'm only gonna do cellar doors.
Yeah.
Versus integrate that one thing into a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. Do you have a favorite trick that you like to do on cellar doors?
No.
Okay. Have you ever sustained any unique or serious injuries skating on? Okay. All right. Would you say that there was one of what's the hardest cellar door for you to access, and was skating it worthwhile?
Well, the one that I never got to skate was the one that Jerry back 5-0'd across.
Which one is that?
That's the one at the corner of Old Slip and William Street, maybe?
Okay.
Or one of those streets down there.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not William, but it's one of those streets. Maybe Pearl.
Okay.
Might be Pearl Street. And it was just there was always a restaurant there, and one could make the case that Jerry's dedication to that was there was also residential buildings above it. There was a lot of factors into that. I just didn't have the wherewithal. It was also a hard door to skate, and I just never got a chance to skate it. And now there's scaffolding around it.
You can't skate it.
Yeah. But it's not a huge deal. It was like, you know,
the one that got away.
The time and energy to do that was just not worth it to me.
Right.
You know, it was like I don't need that shit. You know. Whereas some people maybe needed it.
Right.
You know, you're talking about. Again, getting into that mindset of like ABD. This one's never been touched.
Right.
So it is like the crowning jewel kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or the maybe not the crowning jewel, but you know, you're getting into like holy grail type territory.
Okay.
You know, validifying, you know, objects.
Yeah.
But yeah, whatever. But it looks fun as shit, and it's definitely a little puzzle.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about spots, is trying to figure out like where you got to go to get to, like, you got to avoid the lock and you got to avoid this crack. You know, the other thing is that spot was hugely modified with Bondo. It needed to happen. But, you know, me, it's like I'm a lot lazier. Like I said, not that I have never modified a spot, but it's like I also don't have a car. So it's like if you're talking about like hauling material over there to fuck with it, I don't have that. You know, it's just whatever.
So you work with what you got? Yeah. With some limitation?
With some limitation, yeah. And
do you find that the limitation is like rewarding in terms of the creativity?
Yeah, because, you know, like I said, it's going to take more for that person to come up behind you. And then the other thing is that you're getting into like a little bit of like bragging rights, where it's like, well, you used a sign. I didn't use a sign. Right. You know, so it's like, or whatever it is. Bondo, fucking, you know, whatever. Okay. Cement. Yeah. So, again, it's like just little bullshit like that kind of thing.
Do you still go looking for cellar doors now?
No. Although I still find them.
You still find them?
Yeah, I found one in Woodside the other day that was insane.
Where at?
Don't worry about it.
I know a little spot over there. It's not a cellar door, but it's like this little bank up against a wall near the LIRR. I'll bring you there.
Oh yeah, I know. It's the underpass. Yeah, there's a couple of them over there.
It's so hard to skate.
I mean, it's kind of like
it's very tight.
Yeah, the bank is pretty small. It's like this high.
Yeah, it kind of gets bigger.
Yeah. There's the one there's ones that go right up to the wall, and then there's the other one that has like a little lip.
The little lip.
Yeah, that one's cool.
All right, man.
That's like Woodside Avenue, not Woodside. Whatever it is. My girlfriend's mom lives right over there.
Okay. Yeah. There's like a weird side street there.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah. And then that school is over there as well.
Yeah.
That school is like relatively new. There's actually a couple of schools over there that are relatively new. But is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.